Hello everyone, and thanks once again for joining us for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 13th day of June. I'm David Percy. First graphic here we've got is hazardous weather graphic, and there are no watches, warnings, or advisories out for mainland Alaska, the Panhandle, Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, or the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. So moving on to the fire danger map, again now for Spruce. You can see a big swath of blue now over the western interior. That's where some wetting rains have fallen. For example, let's see, Koyuk there by Norton Bay and Chektuluk River picked up about 3/10 of an inch of precipitation in the last 24 hours or so. Aniak, farther to the south, had 4/10 of an inch. Sleetmute picking up about 2/10 of an inch. And cooler temperatures and the more moist conditions there eliminating the fire danger in the west and southwest part of the state from Bristol Bay northward. Still have some high fire danger for Spruce out in the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta area down into Togiak and those areas. And then extreme fire danger up over the Yukon Flats, kind of the usual spot for that from one year to the next, it seems like, persists there for quite some time. And also down in the Fairbanks area, some extreme fire danger there. Temperatures today, that was the warm spot in the state, was at Fairbanks and Livingood, both with 74 degrees this afternoon, contrasting that with just 32 degrees at Tin City. That was at mid-afternoon during the day today. And actually, this fire danger forecast for Tuesday, tomorrow, as that frontal system not going to make too much eastward progress there, so don't look for much in the way of any significant rainfall to push any farther to the east. It'll just kind of do a slow dissolve in place there. But you can also see some high fire danger, the very high fire danger in the Susitna Valley, with high fire danger over the western Kenai Peninsula areas and a small area there in the along the Copper River and the Copper River Basin areas. And from there, going to satellite imagery, low pressure spinning over Norton Sound, moving up to just south of Nome here at the last picture at 2 p.m. this afternoon. And that front pushing the rain and showers eastward there into the lower and mid Yukon River Valley areas southward across the Kuskokwim Valley into northeast Bristol Bay and the Alaska Peninsula there. Another system bringing some clouds and moisture into Kodiak Island. And showers over the northern panhandle today with moisture associated with the system up over the Yukon brought roughly about, let's see, a third of an inch of precipitation to Juneau in the last 12 hours with conditions dry and mostly sunny, as you can see down toward St. Lawrence, or down toward the southern panhandle, Dixon entrance, Prince of Wales Island, mostly sunny there. Dry conditions with showers up to the north, and Yakutat picking about 0.15 of an inch. And mostly dry, some scattered showers along the North Gulf Coast. Generally just cloudy skies there into Prince William Sound. And a cloudier day, windier than it was yesterday, but still rather dry, not too bad condition-wise. But out to the west, clear skies, sunshine, Pribilof Islands, partly sunny over the Fox Islands there and much of the southeast Bering Sea. But a lot of loose clouds over the northern Bering, and then a big heavy cloud shield there with the system, as you can see, going to the IR shot here, not really showing up the lower clouds, but more of the higher top, colder clouds. You can see the cirrus shield pushing into the western Aleutians there, and even heavier off to the southwest. And you can see the system over the western interior of that low center, very close or just to the south of Nome, and some more clouds with another low pressure area that's south of Kodiak Island, pushing the moisture northward there, and also the clouds over the northern Panhandle, eastern North Gulf Coast with partly sunny skies, Kenai Peninsula, northern Cook Inlet, Copper River Basin, mostly sunny with temperatures in the 70s, north of the Alaska Range over the eastern interior, up into the Arctic Village area, a fair amount of sunshine there as well. And rolling this through again, you can see that band of moisture over the western part of the state really just kind of moving from south to north line parallel to the wind flow, so it's not going to make much of an eastward progress. Actually, the low center will be pulling back to the north and northwest, and so that band of moisture will just sort of fade away in place there. And on the chart today, you can see the areas of rain with that frontal system. Isolated thunderstorms, really not too widespread as of yet. I think a couple of strikes in the Koyukuk Valley, maybe a lightning strike over the eastern Alaska Range, probably be a few more here before mid-evening along the mountainous terrain, usual areas, the Alaska Range, and possibly up there near the Yukon River in advance of that front. Otherwise, rain Kodiak Island with that system to the south, and the showers actually ending over the Panhandle there earlier today with the sunshine breaking out this afternoon. And the Bering Sea, areas of low clouds and fog along the Aleutians, along with some clearing as we saw on the visible satellite imagery. For tonight, not much change out that way. Light winds continue over the Bering Sea, all the way from the Strait right down to the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula areas. Be some clearing there over the western interior as it dries out a little bit with that front kind of hanging in the same position there across, maybe pushing in close to the Alaska Range, kicking off some areas of light rain or showers that'll just follow the frontal boundary there up to the western Arctic coast, but nothing too significant. Lighter amounts than what we saw in the last 24 hours. Scattered showers over the Alaska Range, mountains in and around to the north of Fairbanks, down to the Coast Range. Lingering showers in the northern panel, stays dry to the south. And for Tuesday, again, some scattered thunderstorms developing over the Alaska Range, maybe the Kuskokwim Mountains up into the central interior, and also maybe along the Koyukuk Valley to possibly the southern slopes of the central Brooks Range, as well as the eastern Alaska Range, but nothing really widespread, no real heavy precipitation expected across a very wide area. Should be another mostly sunny day with highs in the 70s there for the Yukon Flats areas north of Fairbanks, and definitely drier over the western interior again. Weak system pushing some warm front type precipitation and weather, which is low clouds, fog, drizzle, light rain, and IFR flying conditions in over the northern Bering Sea, western Seward Peninsula area, St. Lawrence Island. Some of that could slip down along the Yukon Delta coast, but whatever it does will be quite light. And then it stays wet over the Kodiak Island area. Some of that moisture trying to push northward, but having a hard time doing so. Looks like some rain will get into the southern Kenai Peninsula, Kamishak, Kachemak Bay. Just isolated showers over northern Cook Inlet, and that'll be over the Chugach Mountains and the Talkeetnas. Another day like today over the Panhandle, showers in the north, sunshine in the south, and then that storm you can see showing up now on the chart, 990 millibar low southwest of the western Aleutians, bring gale force winds into the entire Aleutian chain and the southern Bering Sea during the day on Wednesday and into the afternoon, pushing heavy wind and rain into the Fox Islands, increasing chances of rain for the Alaska Peninsula areas. They'll stay south of the Pribilofs at least into early evening Wednesday. We start to see an increase in the winds there for the Pribilofs late tomorrow, definitely overnight tomorrow night. But high pressure over the western part of the state, light winds, mostly fair conditions, some sunshine, especially in the north, scattered showers over Bristol Bay, and along the western Alaska Range of the weak trough there, and isolated thunderstorms possible along the central and eastern Alaska Range, and probably a pretty good chance of seeing some thunderstorm activity up over the eastern Brooks Range. Otherwise dry for the Arctic coast and North Slope. Look for mostly sunny skies for the Panhandle, even in the north on Wednesday with light wind conditions, partly to mostly sunny Kenai Peninsula and Cook Inlet with showers over Kodiak Island. Lows tonight, lower to mid-30s for the North Slope and the Arctic coast, otherwise in the 40s to lower 50s over the eastern interior. Lows in the mid to upper 30s over the western part of the state, especially lower 30s over the Seward Peninsula, and mid-30s for the lows St. Lawrence Island, near 40 for the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, lower to mid-40s Bristol Bay, 40s to near 50 south central Alaska, in the 40s for the Panhandle, lower 40s for the Aleutians. Highs tomorrow, much like today, back into the mid-70s, Fairbanks area into the Yukon Flats, near 70 in the central interior, cooling back to the 50s to near 60 over the western interior, but near 50 along the coast, just 39 degrees for St. Lawrence Island, Savunga, Gamble, and 30s to lower 40s for the Arctic coast and North Slope areas. Actually, North Slope pushing into the lower 60s with temperatures near 70 for Arctic Village. 60s, south central Alaska, Copper River Basin. Lower to mid 60s for the southeast coast. Lows in the 40s for the Panhandle for Wednesday morning. 40s to lower 50s for much of interior Alaska, although lower 40s out west in the colder air. And again, near 40 for the Pribilofs, lower 40s in the Aleutians. Lower to mid 30s for the Arctic coast, and near 40 for the lows for the North Slope into the Brooks Range, upper 40s. Highs again, 75 to 80, Fairbanks on up to the Yukon Flats, Beaver, Chalk-Yitzhak, Fort Yukon. Lower 40s for the Arctic coast, so showing some warming up that way with, again, highs in the lower 60s for the North Slope, and lower 60s over the western interior, near 50 out along the southwest coast, 54 for the Pribilofs, and back into the 70s, lower 70s anyway for the Copper River Basin, Susitna Valley area, well into the 60s for the Kenai Peninsula, and showing some warming with more sunshine for the Panhandle.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather, a lot of IFR on the Arctic coast down into the North Slope. Some of that south of the Brooks Range there, across the western Brooks Range into the Kobuk Valley. And IFR from the Bering Strait and along the western Seward Peninsula, down across St. Lawrence Island, St. Matthew Island, and then extending southwestward and then south across the western Aleutians. Adak eastward to False Pass, marginal VFR. Pribilofs marginal, IFR, eastern Bristol Bay, Iliamna Lake, southern Cook Inlet into Prince William Sound, and the southern Copper River Basin, all IFR, including Kodiak Island, and some IFR in over the southern Panhandle. For the afternoon, we've got, again, IFR now from the northwest coast, Cape Lisburne, Point Hope, Kivalina, down across now over half of the Seward Peninsula, all of St. Lawrence Island, St. Matthew Island, and IFR now from Atka westward to Shimianat-2. Marginal VFR for the Pribilofs and the eastern Aleutians, western Alaska Peninsula marginal, and coastal areas of the Yukon Delta, marginal VFR. Good VFR interior Alaska from northern Cook Inlet right on up to the North Slope and western Arctic coast, eastern Arctic coast in areas as well. It's a little bit of lingering IFR though around Prudhoe Bay, and marginal VFR. Wrangell Mountains, North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, and a band of IFR, kind of a sharp contrast there from, say, Kenai down to Anchor Point, going from VFR to IFR in a pretty short area there, and that extends down across Kodiak Island. Marginal VFR right on along the southeast coast. And for Wednesday morning, let's see, we've got IFR, eastern Kodiak Island, IFR, eastern Arctic coast, and another band of IFR along the from the northern Bering Sea, Seward Peninsula, down along the Yukon Delta coast again, and then a more widespread area of IFR pushing in with the next system over the southwest Bering Sea, eastward to Atka Island and a little beyond, but VFR in advance of the storm. Fox Islands, Alaska Peninsula, Panhandle looking good, VFR flying there. Some marginal VFR over the southeast interior, especially along the North Gulf Coast and Prince William Sound. But that gives way to good VFR in the afternoon. We have the Kuskokwim Valley zone, all IFR there, otherwise likely due to smoke. Otherwise VFR in the interior, lots of IFR out over the Bering Sea through the Bering Strait there, but mostly off the Arctic coast. And VFR for the Panhandle, Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, and for passes, Anatuvik, marginal VFR tomorrow at times, mostly VFR for Adigan, and Lake Clark and Merrill, mostly VFR, ceilings visibilities above the marginal category. Same forecast for rainy. There'll be clouds, maybe some showers, but they'll be of the VFR variety. And windy VFR, although I don't think there'll be too much chance of showers there for a rainy pass. Isabel, though, VFR. Mentasta, also pretty good VFR for Tanita. And Portage, marginal VFR, could start out IFR on the eastern entrance, the Passes Canal side, the Whittier side, tomorrow morning, and then becoming mostly marginal, either approach in the afternoon at times. Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, 8,000 feet with some upper level high pressure over the Yukon Flats there, all the way up to the eastern Arctic coast. 2,000 to 4,000 feet, that cold pool kind of pulling back to the northwest there over the northern Bering Sea, but still a 2,000 foot pocket there right over the Alaska Peninsula. And 32 degrees should occur over Adak at about 6,000 feet, as well as Anchorage. And for icing, areas of isolated moderate, Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island, some of that could be of a mixed variety there. Also for Kodiak Island, southern Kenai Peninsula, just a chance of some isolated moderate icing. And then rime icing pushing into the western Aleutians to possibly as far east as Adak, although the heavier stuff staying to the south. Jet stream westerly 75 knots over the Aleutians, and south to southeast pretty light except 65 knots on the northwest coast. 9,000 feet south, 40 knots, northern Bering Sea right through the strait there, turning a little more southeasterly over the Chukchi Sea. Southeast 40 to 45 knots over the western Aleutians, actually including Adak, central Aleutians call it, west central. Southeast 45 knots, Bering Strait into the Chukchi Sea, south to southwest 45 knots into the St. Lawrence Island area. Southeast 45, central western Aleutians. Look for moderate chop for Adak, the Seward Peninsula, as well as the western Brooks Range, Noatak Valley areas. Otherwise pretty smooth over the remainder of the state. I'll be back with the marine forecast after the break.
Space weather affects technologies. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches to our customers so they can take action.
The Space Weather Prediction Center has had a long-standing relationship with the power industry, so they've been aware that solar storms, the geomagnetic storm piece of that, can affect the operation of their systems and induce extra currents and loads on those systems that can either trip those systems offline or in the worst of cases, cause damage. That relationship goes back for several decades. In fact, a big incident in 1989 where part of Quebec was tripped offline that affected something like 6 million customers for about 9 hours. I think that really raised the awareness in the power industries.
When we get the alert, we watch the grid and start looking for issues. Are we seeing a decline in voltage? Are we seeing equipment failures? And we readjust the system to try to mitigate those problems, try to keep the lights on and keep it from going out.
So averaging about 500, 550 kilometers per second.
If we didn't have this early warning, we wouldn't see it until our sensor saw it. Getting more information quicker and faster before the storm hits, not during the storm, is a big improvement.
In the long term, I think what we need and what we're moving toward, the U.S. as a whole, is better modeling, fully understanding this phenomenon, understanding how it would impact specific systems.
Rather than actually experiencing a storm, we can simulate storms in our software and see what the impact is. We try to get ahead of it. We always plan that if there's an outage, how can we keep the lights on? What's the best process to prevent it?
In the end, 5-10 years from now, there's going to be a whole mix of operational procedures driven by what we do on prediction and warning. And then there also will probably be some level of hardware controls to ensure the reliability of the grid.
Space weather affects technologies. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches to our customers so they can take action.
There's different types of impacts on communication systems, and the HF we call the high frequency, which is that band of communications 3 to 30 megahertz. But it's a very important band of radio communication because it's used widespread. It's used, for example, by the airlines.
HF radio is most commonly used for position reporting when you're going across the ocean airspace, which is devoid of radar. And ATC can't see you, so it's up to you to report your position and your altitude and your speed.
HF works great most of the time, except during a big flare. And during a big flare, that HF communication capability could be gone within a minute or two. So as soon as we see something happening in there and we see a flare, it's one of the first things we do is alert the aviation community, hey, big flare, HF's going to be impacted.
Once we know that there's an event going on, then the aviation industry and the airlines can react to that. They can alter their routes over the poles. They can lower the altitudes that they're flying at, or maybe decide not to fly at all in the interest of the passenger safety.
So that's just one example of how HF is used, but the emergency response community will use it a lot too. It's one of their primary backups.
When you've lost connectivity between certain government agencies, it gives you that long-range coverage to talk from out-of-state to federal governments or from the FEMA locations to the state emergency operations centers.
So if you've got a big hurricane impact in the coastline, whatever big city, we've got the cell towers down and whatnot, we've got emergency communication folks in there. Those folks are very familiar with space weather and how it impacts their systems.
Here in recent years, it was used during Katrina when we had a lot of communications outages down there. It was also used during Hurricane Ike. There was an outage of the telephone circuits with the Texas State Emergency Office, so it was used in both of those situations.
So when we talk about backup, especially for the airlines, typically they'll have SATCOM, so that'll be satellite communication.
The satellite technology that emergency responders use could be GPSs, could be satellite phones, satellite data terminals.
Space weather events can impact SATCOMs. The impact can range from a nuisance to loss of a spacecraft. So we will give them the heads up. If we have space weather events, flares, whatnot, they need to know what's impacting their systems. Situational awareness is key. Time is of essence to these folks. Again, it's life and death.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Coastal water forecasts, south coast of the Panhandle, south winds 10 to 15 knots for Tuesday, seas about 4 feet. And then south to southeast winds on the north coast, seas 5 feet. Lincoln Glacier Bay, southeast winds 15, southeast at 10 for Stevens Passage. And Clarence Strait has a forecast wind speed tomorrow of 15 knots from the south. And moving on to the day Wednesday. Winds swing around to the north on the south coast at 20 knots, seas up a little bit to 6 feet, and northwest winds 15 to 20 knots for the north coast. And for the northern inner channels, variable to north winds at 10 knots, and northwest winds 15 knots for Stevens Passage and Clarence Strait with 3-foot seas. North Gulf Coast tomorrow, east winds 15 to 20 knots, seas 5 to 6 feet. Prince William Sound, east winds 10 knots, seas 2 feet. East winds 20 knots with 6-foot seas for the Barren Islands. Northeast winds 20 knots with 4-foot seas for Kamishak Bay. Cook Inlet, variable to northeast winds at 10 knots with 2 to 3-foot seas. And for Wednesday, Cook Inlet, south to southwest winds 15 knots, seas 4 feet. Prince William Sound, light westerly breeze at 10 knots with slight seas. And 15-knot winds for the North Gulf Coast, seas running 4 to 5 feet. Southeast winds 15 for the Barren Islands and south 15 for Kamishak Bay. Kodiak Island, east-northeast winds 15 to 25 knots for the day Tuesday. Alaska Peninsula, northwest winds 15 to 20 knots with 3 to 6-foot seas. Bristol Bay, northwest winds 20 knots, seas 4 feet. Wednesday, Bristol Bay, variable winds of 15 knots. Gale warnings, though, for the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula from Cape Sarachef to Castle Cape. Southeast winds 35 knots, but the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula just southeast at 15. And for Kodiak Island, variable to northeast winds 10 to 15 knots. And for Unalaska Island tomorrow, west-northwest winds 10 to 15 knots. Unimak Island, variable to southwest winds at 10 knots. Adak and Atka, southeast winds 20 knots, seas 4 feet. Small craft advisories for Amchitka Island for southeast winds at 25 knots with 5-foot seas. Kiska to Shimia, winds will be east at 20. Then we've got gale warnings for all of the Aleutians on Wednesday with that strong frontal system moving up to the area there. So east-northeast winds 35 knots from Shimei to Amchitka Island with seas up to 16 feet, 40 knot east-southeast winds for Adak and Atka, as well as Unimak Island, all looking at 40 knot winds from the east-southeast with seas running 14 to 16 feet. On Alaska Island, southeast winds 35 to 40 knots, seas as high as 14 feet. Southwest coast on Tuesday, west-southwest winds 20 knots, Pribilof southwest at 15, St. Matthew Island winds will be southwest at 20 knots, and small craft advisories for St. Lawrence Island and Norton Sound, both looking at a 25 knot wind from the south with seas running 5 to 6 feet. And for Wednesday, Norton Sound coming down to 15 knots, still from a southerly direction, St. Lawrence Island south winds at 20 knots with 4-foot seas. And the southwest coast, fairly light winds, southeast at 15 knots with 3-foot seas. And St. Matthew Island, southeast winds 15 knots, but the Pribilofs, east winds increasing to 30 knots with seas building to 9 feet. And for the Arctic coast on Tuesday, winds east 20 knots, seas on the west side there in the ice-free waters up to 4 feet. Small craft advisories from Cape Beaufort to Wales for east-southeast winds at 25 knots with 4 to 5-foot seas. And for Wednesday, Wales to Cape Beaufort, southeast winds 20 knots, 4 to 5-foot seas, southeast 15 knots on the western Arctic coast, central and eastern coast, pretty uniform with 15-knot winds, all from the east. And for tonight, front bringing some moisture into the central interior, light rain and showers from the western Arctic coast right down into the central interior around Tanana area, southern Koyukuk Valley, southward into the Kuskokwim Valley, western Alaska range. Some of that could spill into Cook Inlet, but whatever it does will be quite light. Scattered showers, southeast interior, northern panhandle, drying out down to the south, periods of rain, Kodiak Island. And then on Tuesday, system brings some light rain, fog, and drizzle into St. Lawrence Island, northern Bering Sea there, Seward Peninsula. Otherwise, scattered thunderstorms in the afternoon over the mountainous terrain over the interior with highs in the lower 70s, eastern interior, and starting to recover a little bit, 50s to mid-60s out west, and showers northern panhandle, rain for Kodiak Island. And Wednesday, big storm, strong frontal system bringing gale force winds into all of the Aleutians, into the southern Bering Sea with moderate amounts of rain. Otherwise, pretty nice conditions over the panhandle, mostly sunny, light winds, and some scattered showers and thunderstorms.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.